I knew it. I shouldn't have been invited here tonight. You should have included me out. Because if we're going to speak of forgiveness as if we're qualified, well, I may have to hide my little notebook, the one where I tally the irritations that I pretend not to notice. You don't have a notebook? You have a file cabinet. I keep mine smaller. It's easier to smuggle into church. We come here with our polished faces and our yes, brother, yes, sister. And inside, we're still running a private ledger of minor betrayals and late phone calls and that tone in their voice that sounded like a sneeze but felt like an insult. I know, because I've written my ledger in invisible ink and then sat under a light until it glowed. So when Peter asks the Master, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Till 7 times. And the Master answers, I say not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. Matthew 18:20, 1, 2, 2. We do what our accountants do best. We reach for a pencil. 7 times, I can stretch to 8. 70 times 7, 490, write it on a chart, check the box, let the family see I'm practically a saint by Thanksgiving. And if I get to 491, well, surely the angels owe me a medal and an exemption. Do you see what we do? We translate a doorway into homework. We are very clever at turning grace into arithmetic. If God wanted bookkeepers, he would have given us all green visors. Let's twist that Bible upside down. Forgiveness is not a personality trick. It is not the art of becoming a nicer version of the same old offended self. Do you think the God self of you is offended? Do you imagine infinity keeps your little accounting of slights waiting to balance it at cocktail hour? Who is it that gets ruffled? Who swells and hardens and says, I am the one who was wrong? Humanhood, a sense of selfhood apart from God. The offended self is humanhood's favorite costume. It makes us feel alive when the holiness is quiet. We can feed on injury for years because it gives the personal self a delicious reason to exist. Now, I am not here to trade quotations like baseball cards. Be still and know that I am God, Psalm 46:10. Does not mean buy a mug with those words on it and keep fussing. It means be still before the story hardens. In the very first prick of offense, be still before it manufactures a name tag, the one who has been wronged. If forgive 70 times 7 is a command at all, it is a command to lay down the costume again and again and again until there is no costume left to lay down. It isn't about their deserving. It is about our dissolving. This isn't theory. This is a loop we can live in, hour by hour. The sting rises, we go still. The mind starts to paint a villain. We impersonalize, separate the claim from the Christ. The heart wants to rehearse. We release the picture and refuse to carry an enemy in consciousness. Offense arises, stillness, impersonalization, release. Then perhaps in 2 minutes or 2 hours, it rises again and we walk it again. 70 times 7 is the end of counting. Judge not, and ye shall not be judged. Condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned. Forgive, and ye shall be forgiven. Luke 6:37. Not forgiven by a deity called Mr. Scorekeeper, but forgiven back into your own freedom. Do you see? The verse is not for them. It is for the little prison we build inside. Every kept resentment is another brick. Every rehearsal of their face is mortar. And then we sit in our own cell and say, Lord, why have you forsaken me? And heaven answers, child, the key has been hanging around your neck. Use it. Even at the cross, the Master showed it. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34. Not theater, release. Outwardly cold-blooded, no drama, no speech. Inwardly overheated with love that refuses to create an enemy and thereby refuses to create another self to be offended. If you hear sternness in me, hear also the compassion that says, I know the sweetness of being offended. I have sipped it. I have slept with it. I have bragged about it to myself, and I know it's poison. So tonight we are not training nicer egos. We are unlearning the habit of living inside the offended self. It's a tomb if you're living inside it. It's only a self if you step outside and let it be an instrument of Christ. 70 times 7 is not a punishment, it is the escape route. If you will let me, I will walk with you through the loop, not once, but as often as the sting rises, until stillness is not a trick you do, but the air you breathe, and freedom is not an event you reach, but the one you are. Let's twist that Bible upside down and shake the arithmetic out of its pockets. We have lived so long with religious language that we mistake it for spiritual realization. So try this with me. Rephrase the verse until it becomes breath, not sermon. When you hear forgive 70 times 7, say within, each time separation suggests itself, I come home. When the mind whispers, they did it again, answer, I will not live as the one who was wronged. When the image of their face rises like a billboard in consciousness, say, I drop the picture, I refuse an enemy. When the ache protests, but it hurts, let the God self in you speak. Be still. This sting is not my identity, not my life, not my supply, not my peace. Do you see the difference? There are two worlds hiding in these pages. One is Mosaic good and necessary for children, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, Matthew 5:38. Columns balanced, 2 times 2, ledgers squared, debts paid in kind. The other is the Christ world where the arithmetic dissolves. But I say unto you that ye resist not evil, Matthew 5:39, where forgiveness does not balance a book but burns the book, where love is not a wage but an atmosphere. In one world, we live by settlements and scorecards. In the other, we live by oneness, where there is nothing outside to pay and nothing inside to defend. Which world are you reading from when you read the same verse? And now let me be nosy, because the soul requires blunt questions. Do you forgive because they improved? Because they finally behaved in a way that made you feel safe? Do you forgive because they apologized with tears and you enjoy the sound of your own magnanimity? Do you forgive because you're afraid that if you don't, God will fold his arms and say, no forgiveness for you either? As if heaven were a kiosk with a return policy? Or do you forgive because you refuse to live in separation, because you have seen the cost of carrying an enemy in your chest and you will not pay it with your life? Forgiveness, in Christ language, is recognition. This offense is not my identity, not my life, not my supply, not my peace. My identity is I and my Father are one, John 10:30. My life is abide in me and I in you, John 15:4. My supply is not their approval, but the kingdom of God within you, Luke 17:21. My peace is not the lull between quarrels, but the stillness that is before the quarrel begins. Forgiveness is the inner act of unbelieving the story that a person has power over your being, and unbelieving the story that there is a you apart from God to be harmed at all. No theater, no virtue pose, recognition, release. Now, do not make a hobby of rearranging human relationships to be more pleasant and call it spirituality. Pleasantness is cheap. Buy 2 cookies and it will visit you for 10 minutes. Our practice is more radical. Stop manufacturing a personal self that must be consulted, attended, and defended every hour. When the mind reaches for its name tag, offended, wounded, on alert, you drop your hand. When instinct wants to file a claim, you disown the claimant. The aim is not to make them nicer. The aim is to stop living inside a costume that can be insulted. So say it your way. Translate the red letters into the language of your ribs. I withdraw from the belief in separation. I refuse to carry an enemy. I live from the inside, not by outside accounts. If you must use arithmetic, use this. Every time the thought of an offender appears, subtract the picture, subtract the story, subtract the self who would capitalize on it, until only the Christ remains, nothing to count, no one to defend, nowhere for hatred to stick. This is forgiveness in the Christ world. It is not leniency toward misbehavior. It is bankruptcy court for the ego's ledger, and the case is dismissed for lack of a separate plaintiff. Now let us open the hood and look at the machinery humming under our noble faces. Humanhood, left to itself, forms identity by injury. It whispers, "Who am I?" Oh, that's simple. I am the one who was treated unfairly. I am the one who did everything right and was overlooked. I am the one with a story. It is very industrious, this humanhood. It weaves costumes overnight, and the favorite costume is the offended self, because it comes with a cape righteousness and a theme song, self-justification. Did you ever notice how quickly the scene rearranges when offense takes the stage? We suddenly have a spotlight, a supporting cast of villains and sympathizers, and the most beloved prop of all, a grievance we can carry like a baby we don't want to outgrow. Let's be honest, offense pays. It pays us with the feeling of being a real someone, a solid somebody. If I can say, I was wronged, then I have a role, a right, a reason to gather allies, and a permission slip to avoid stillness. Stillness is dangerous to the offended self because it dissolves the outline. So the mind hurries to harden the outline history, motives, evidence, witnesses. The case must be airtight so the self can be airtight. We pretend the pain is the whole matter, but pain is not the architect here. Identity is. Pain arrives, yes, but offense says, give it to me. I can turn this into a self. And then we agree to live inside the story the way some live inside a body. I told you before, it's a tomb if you're living inside it. It's only a body if you're outside, using it as an instrument. Offense is the same. It's a tomb if you live inside its narrative. It's only a passing weather report if you stand outside it in God. Do you think it's the God self in you that is offended? Do you think divine life can be diminished by a remark, a betrayal, a slight, a board meeting, a look? Do you think infinity blushes when someone forgets your title? Do you imagine, honestly now, that the spirit that says, heaven is my throne, and earth is my footstool, is moved to fury by your neighbor's sarcasm? Who is injured? Who is reenacting the scene at 3 a.m? Who is polishing the argument until it glows in the dark? Our humanhood, a sense of selfhood apart from God. When you see that, the idol loses its power. You stop begging the world to treat your mask more gently, and you begin to let the mask go. Paul admitted it in the most bracing of phrases. I die daily. 1 Corinthians 15:31. Not I dramatize daily, not I gossip daily. I die daily to the personal self that must be validated and avenged. And the Master set the cadence. If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily. Luke 9:23. Daily. Because the offended self is a morning person, it rises early, makes coffee, and plans your conversations before you've brushed your teeth. So we answer it with a daily funeral, quiet and thorough. When the mind reaches for the role, the one who was wronged, we do not shout it down. We step aside. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10 is not embroidery. It is a surgical instruction. Be still before the story hardens. Feel the first heat without adding wood. Let the pain pass through without surrendering your identity to it. There is a hidden payoff we must name, or it will keep collecting interest in the dark. Offense lets us be right without being free. It gives us a courtroom in which we always win the case, and a cell we never leave. Freedom asks more. It asks that we relinquish being the hero of our own sorrow. It asks that we prefer truth to triumph. It asks that we treasure the Christ identity, I and my Father are one, John 10:30, more than the deliciousness of an eloquent injury. That is why this is not a single act but a way of breathing. Die to the claimant again. Deny the self that insists on a verdict again. Refuse the invitation to live inside the scene. Again, 70 times 7. Not because God is stubborn, but because humanhood is inventive. So the diagnosis is clear and kind. Offense is not just pain. It is an identity project. Pull the permit. Close the site. Each day, let the personal contractor arrive with his blueprints. We'll build a beautiful grievance right here. And each day, take the plans out of his hands and lay them on the altar. No drama, no speech, outwardly cold-blooded, inwardly overheated with love for the one life. In that daily death, you do not end. You finally cease pretending to begin. You stop living as the one who was wronged and find yourself living as the one who cannot be wronged, because the life you are resides where no offense can stick. Now the first move, and it will save your life if you make it in time. Do nothing. Not saintly, nothing, no halo, no pose, just nothing outwardly for a moment. Set a watch, O Lord, before my mouth, keep the door of my lips, Psalm 141-3, before the explanation, before the long text with the footnotes, before the rehearsal for the jury of your closest friends. Do nothing. Let the phone sit there and blink. Let the email burn like a meteor on re-entry. The offended self demands a counterpunch to become real. Deny it its birth certificate. If you do not move, if you do not bark, if you do not reach for the clever sentence that will finally clarify your innocence, you have already broken the spell. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46-10 is not embroidery, we said. It is an emergency brake. What is happening inside in that first instant? The human mind, your little contractor with his tool belt, runs to the job site, measuring tape out, drawing chalk lines for me and you. It identifies the wound, assigns motives, drafts a press release. Do you feel it? Heat in the chest, a tightening at the root of the throat, a rush behind the eyes, an urgency to be understood that feels like survival. That is the altar the personal self builds in seconds and then demands you worship. Don't. Stand 1 inch to the side. Breathe as if the universe does not hang on the next sentence, because it doesn't. In returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Isaiah 30-15. Return, rest, be quiet. This is not passivity, it is authority. It is standing outside the storm in the boat and hearing the master within say to the waves, "Peace, be still." Mark 4:39. You will say, "But I will explode if I don't say something." No, you will dissolve the fuse. The fuse is language. The bomb is a picture. The explosion is identity hardening. If you will give yourself 60 seconds of holy unemployment, no job to be the one who explains, no job to be the one who punishes, something else happens. The surge runs through, and you have not given it your name. Let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. James 1:19. Swift to hear what? Hear the silence before your story. Hear the inner authority that does not need an adversary to be strong. Slow to speak, because words forge chains faster than they forge keys. Slow to wrath, because wrath is just grievance rehearsed with symbols. Now attend to the body. It is not your home, it is your dashboard. When offense hits, lights flash. Heat, tightness, shallowness of breath. See the lights without climbing under the hood with a wrench in your teeth. If your jaw locks, unlock it. If your shoulders rise, let them drop like sacks you forgot were on your back. And when the mind says, hurry before they get away with it, answer with the Christ within, I can of mine own self do nothing. John 5:30. That is not weakness. That is insulation. It is you stepping out of the reactive tomb and standing as the one life that cannot be hurried into foolishness. Outwardly cold-blooded still, simple, nothing to perform, inwardly overheated with love that protects both your neighbor and you from the theater of a fresh war. Stillness is the wedge in the machine. It breaks the reflex that turns a moment of pain into a lifelong identity. Without it, a pinprick becomes a passport, and we stamp it every hour. I, the injured. With it, the pinprick remains what it was, sensation without a self. Be angry and sin not. Ephesians 4:26. Feel what is there, but don't weave it into a costume. If you must walk to the sink and run cold water over your wrists, do it. If you must look out the window and count the shrubs, do it. If you must put the phone face down and read a red letter line, let not your heart be troubled, John 14:1, do it. These small obediences are not tricks, they are acknowledgments of where the government of your life rests. And here is the bridge you will need for the next step. When you are still, the scene loosens. The rude word is no longer a spear, it is sound. The face you are ready to canonize as enemy becomes a changing weather pattern. In that spaciousness, you can see it. This is an impersonal claim, knocking noise at the door of consciousness, not a definition of you, not a revelation about them. If you move too soon, the mask glues to your skin and you'll call it your face. If you wait in stillness, the glue never sets. Then, and only then, can you do the holy work of impersonalization, of separating the claim from the Christ, without pretending, without pity, without performance. First, do nothing. Then, see clearly. The offended self starves on that diet, and the God self, fed on quiet, begins to breathe you. Now we take the second step, and it will taste like clean water if you've been drinking from puddles. Impersonalization. In plain speech, it is this what arrived as a suggestion, a weather pattern of humanhood, not my reality. It is wind against the window, not a thief in the house. It is a claim knocking noise at the door of consciousness without the authority to enter unless I sign for the package. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Asked Paul. And then answers every weather report with a no, Romans 8:35, 3:9. Do you hear it? The storm does not define the sky. Now the Socratic knife, quick and kind. Is the Christ in you injured? Is the God self humiliated? Can infinite life be threatened by finite behavior? Do you, in your sober moments, believe that the one who declares before Abraham was, I am, John 8:58, folds under a sarcastic email? Do you think the life that raised the dead checks its pulse after a board meeting? If the answer is no, and it is no, then who is trembling? Our humanhood, a sense of selfhood apart from God, that loves to rent rooms in us and hang pictures on the wall labeled my wound. Impersonalization is not denial of events. It is refusal to give events the naming rights to our selfhood. We are not falsifying facts. We are unbelieving their authority to christen us as the wronged. Let me put it as simply as I can. The claim says, you are diminished. The Christ says, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. Galatians 2:20. The claim hisses, you must carry a picture of an enemy to stay safe. The Christ answers, my peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. John 14:27. The claim bargains. If you hold this hurt, you maintain leverage. The Christ, laughing softly, replies, all that the Father hath is mine. John 16:15. When you impersonalize, you are not playing word games. You are switching governments. And what of the other person, this figure we have painted in courtroom colors? Impersonalization rescues them from your mythology. Not villain, not savior, another humanhood caught in the same dream of separation, reaching for identity with whatever tools lay on their nightstand. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34 is not leniency for criminals, it is diagnosis for sleepers. Do you see how the temperature drops when you see that? You do not have to hate a sleeper. You do not have to worship one either. You step back into the impersonal love that refuses emotional interchange and thereby becomes truly available if service is asked. Now, some of you will say, but if I call it a weather pattern, won't I become naive, a doormat? No. Impersonalization is the opposite of naivete. It is clarity without poison. You may still correct a contract, change a lock, resign a post. Only now you are not living inside the role of the wronged while you do it. Let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. Matthew 5:37. Clean yes, clean no, no drama to season it. The facts may require action. We are not denying that. We deny only their power to tell us who we are while we act. This is the surgical moment, and it prepares the next release. Without impersonalization, release is pretense, sentimental emotion, forced reconciliation, a handshake your stomach doesn't believe. With impersonalization, the poison is drawn, there is nothing to defend, and so there is nothing to rehearse. You stand in the truth that ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, Romans 8-9, which is to say you are not in the costume, but in the life. Then release is simply what happens when a hand opens that had been clenching air, outwardly cold-blooded, no theater, inwardly overheated with a love that has nothing personal to protect. So in practice, catch the claim mid-sentence and rename it, not my identity, not their essence, just human wind. Ask the quick questions until the mask falls. Is the Christ in me hurt? Is infinite life endangered? If not, who is speaking? Then answer from within the red letters you have made your home. The offended self loses its audience. The scene loses its power to cast you. And the room opens for the simple, holy refusal to carry an enemy which we will take in our next breath. Release is the simplest word and the hardest inch. It is not a feeling, it is a decision in consciousness. I will not keep this person in condemnation in my thought. Say it plainly, without music. I lay down the picture. I refuse a private courtroom. I drop the case, not because the facts changed, but because I decline to live as the prosecutor of a universe that belongs to God. And when ye stand praying, forgive, if ye have aught against any. Mark 11-25. That is not a suggestion about manners in church. It is an instruction about what to do with the mental image you keep feeding 3 times a day. Release means, in my kingdom, this inner country, I do not hold indictment. There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus. Romans 8-1. If you are in that consciousness, there is no cell to put anyone in. Do not confuse release with niceness. Niceness is a costume. Release is a government change. You may still set a boundary. You may still end a contract, refuse the loan, change the locks, report abuse. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, Matthew 10:16. Harmlessness in consciousness, serpent clear in practice. Only do it without the theater that hires hatred as a consultant. Do it without the inner prosecution that tries the case every hour to keep the identity of the wronged alive. You can mail the letter, sign the order, say no more, and never once kneel before the idol of an enemy. Neither do I condemn thee, John 8:11, is not indulgence of behavior. It is refusal to live from condemnation while you act. How do we do this in a day built of small stings? When the face rises on the screen of mind, turn off the projector. Exhale the name. Whisper within, Father, into thy hands I commend this picture, Luke 23:46 rephrased. If the story insists, yes, but they said, answer at once with the red letters. Bless them that curse you. Pray for them which despitefully use you, Luke 6:28. Blessing is not sentiment. It is your abstention from mental warfare. You are not arming them. You are disarming yourself. And then stand in quiet. Do not rehearse. Do not recruit a friend to play jury. Do not peek at the picture to see if it still hurts. The hand opens. The air was all it ever held. You will know, released by its fruit. The replay stops. The appetite to retell the scene evaporates. You discover an hour you did not know you had because you are no longer organizing your day around a wound. Energy returns like power to a neighborhood after the lines have been cleared. Your work becomes work again, not a stage where you encue speeches to imaginary audiences. Your body, that faithful dashboard, dims its warning lights. Breath lengthens. The room you had converted into a tribunal reverts to a temple, and into that temple comes a tenderness. You did not manufacture goodwill without stickiness, care without possession. Outwardly cold-blooded, no drama, no performance. Inwardly overheated with love that has no target and so can include the whole. Someone will ask, but if I release, do I not let them get away with it? With what? With their humanhood? They were already wearing it. Do you think the Christ in you needs your courtroom to be safe? Release does not acquit behavior. It vacates your identity from the scene. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, saith the Lord. Romans 12:19 is not a promise of cosmic punishment. It is a reminder that justice belongs to a wisdom not powered by your indignation. If there is correction to be made, let it be made cleanly. If there is departure to be taken, take it without packing hatred in your luggage. The refusal to carry an enemy is freedom without theatrical emotion. And now the sober truth we must not dodge. Release is not a one and done. It is 70 times 7. Why? Because offense is an entrepreneur. It will return in a new suit, bearing a new invoice, asking you to invest again in the same old self. Do not be surprised. Smile at the persistence of the old contractor when he shows up with fresh blueprints. Then run the loop again, stillness, impersonalization. Release until there is nothing left in you that feeds on the role of the wronged. Each release shortens the reflex. Each refusal to condemn thins the identity that needed condemnation to live. At the end of counting, you find you have stopped living as the one who was wronged at all and begun living as the life that cannot be. Why must it be 70 times 7? Because humanhood does not surrender once, it negotiates. It is a little merchant with a back room full of clauses. I'll forgive, it says, but not that. I'll release, but not if it happens again. I'll drop the picture, but I'm keeping the negatives. One last time, and then I'll really be done. Have you noticed how persuasive that last sentence sounds? When the heat is up, just one last speech, and then I'll be spiritual. One last late-night review of the evidence, and then I'll sleep in God. That one last time is the ego's ration card. It keeps a corner of the old house powered so that the offended self can come home when it gets lonely. And you know, if the power is on, someone will live there. So the master disarms the merchant. Peter asks, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Till 7 times. And Jesus, who never misses a chance to abolish arithmetic, replies, I say, not unto thee until 7 times, but until 70 times 7. Matthew 18:21-2. He did not mean we should buy a counter and clip it to our belt. He meant put down the counter. Who is counting? Who benefits from counting? Is the Christ in you logging infractions on a tablet, tallying to make a case? Is infinite love really an auditor with a green visor, hunched over a ledger at midnight, scratching hash marks with a dull pencil? Or is the one doing the math our humanhood, the offended self, the little accountant who needs columns to stay employed? Love thinketh no evil, 1 Corinthians 13-5 KJV, which is to say in simple English, it doesn't keep books. Now do not throw stones at the accountant. He paid your bills in the old way of thinking, and he is afraid to be retired. But we are not back on Mosaic wages. We are in the grace economy now. 70 times 7 is not arithmetic. It is the end of counting, which is to say, the end of the counter, the identity that needs comparison, quotas, last chances, and small hidden safes of righteous indignation. Each return of the offense is not a failure, it is a fresh training ground. I die daily, 1 Corinthians 15:31, is not poetry, it is a program. Forgiveness presents itself again and again, not to humiliate you, but to muscle a new reflex into being. Every time the mind reaches for its clicker to notch another wrong, you gently take the clicker away, and the hand that used to clench begins to forget how. Think of it as spiritual physiotherapy. The joint called self-importance has been overused. The muscle named I was wronged has hypertrophied. The delicate tendons of stillness and impersonal love have atrophied from neglect. So Providence kindly and without sarcasm gives you repetitions. Lift this moment. Lower it with control. Stillness. Impersonalization. Release. Again. Be not weary in well-doing. Galatians 6-9. Who is weary? Not the Christ in you, who is a spring that never argues with how many cups drink from it. The weariness belongs to the self that cannot imagine living without a stash of outrage to snack on. But let me not romanticize it. Repeated forgiveness can feel like loss. It will seem on some nights as if pieces of you are being taken, as if you are granting discounts on your dignity. That sense of loss is not the Christ diminishing. It is the scaffolding creaking as it's taken down. We love our scaffolding, our last word rights, our reservation of one little room with a lock where we can replay the old film. 70 times 7 means surrender the key to that room, and if you find a spare under the mat, bring that too. Whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. Matthew 16:25. Do you hear how naked that is? Lose what life? The life made of countings and retellings and private courts. Find what life? The uncounted life which cannot be added to or subtracted from by another's behavior. Who is angry when the instruction repeats? Who stamps a foot and protests, not again? Not the God self. The God self smiles the way the sea smiles at another wave. It knows the motion cannot alter the depth. It is our humanhood that loves one last time, because one last is poison sugar sweet, and it keeps the self alive. So we practice starvation, we withdraw the rations, we do not feed the ledger. If another day brings another chance to open the fist, we open it. Outwardly cold-blooded, simple, clean, no theater, inwardly overheated with a love that does not tire because it is not personal. And when you begin to discover that the number dissolves, that you don't know if it's the 7th or the 70th because the counter keeps slipping from your hand, you will also discover a new ache, the good ache of rebirth and the sharp ache of the old self dying. This is the doorstep of the dark night, where forgiveness stops feeling like a technique and starts feeling like a death. Do not be afraid of that threshold. It is not your extinction, it is your emancipation. The number disappears because the one who needed numbers is losing his chair at the board. Blessed loss, holy unemployment, and in the space left behind, peace takes a seat and stops asking how many. There comes a night, and don't pretend you don't know it, when you have done the steps cleanly and the applause you were secretly expecting does not arrive. You have denied yourself the sugar of the last word. You have refused the warm coat of outrage. You have put down the picture of an enemy. And what is your reward? Emptiness. You walk into the room where your grievance used to live and the furniture is gone. You reach for the familiar banister called blame, and your hand closes on air. Do not be surprised. Blame was providing you with architectural lines, walls to lean on, corridors to pace, mirrors in which to admire your moral profile. When those studs come out, the house groans. The personal self, our industrious little contractor, loses its favorite suppliers: righteous anger, self-pity, and that costly tile called moral superiority. Of course, it feels like dying. It is dying. Except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. John 12:24. The seed does not write a poem about dying. It goes dark, and something larger takes over. Here is where the most pious trick presents itself. Having laid down the prosecution, we are tempted to pick up a new identity, the one who forgives beautifully. Oh, it has medals. It posts sermons while the wound is still wet. It sighs with a holiness that hopes someone is listening. Do you see the mask swap? Humanhood is happy to wear white robes if they keep it employed. God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. James 4:6. Even forgiveness can become pride if it keeps the eye on stage. So when you feel that swell, look how evolved I am. Smile at the old contractor trying to rename the firm. Don't argue, just don't hire him. What should you do in the black hour? Nothing theatrical. Do not force cheerfulness. Do not paint roses on a tomb. My soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death, the Master said in Gethsemane, Matthew 26-38. And then, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. Luke 22:42. That is our posture. Stand in stillness until a deeper identity appears. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Thou art with me. Psalm 23-4. Not run, not whistle, not quote over your fear as if Scripture were confetti. Walk. Let the shadow do its work without your decoration. Let the nervous hands be empty long enough to learn that they were never feeding you. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Isaiah 40-31. Wait, not as a sulker, but as one who has resigned a counterfeit throne. And if on that night you think even God has gone quiet, hear the cross whisper within you, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Matthew 27-46. The line is not blasphemy, it is solidarity. The personal sense of life must discover in its extremity that it can no longer manufacture presence with its own noise. In the hush that follows, a subtler life stirs that was never absent, only drowned out by the drum of self-concern. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Psalm 51-10. A clean heart is not a cheerful heart. It is an unoccupied one, vacated by idols, available to be filled with what is not of your making. Do not be afraid of simplicity in this hour. Sit, breathe, whisper no names into condemnation. Let the body be a dashboard, not a judge. If tears come, let them wash instead of narrate. If silence stretches, let it stretch until it fits you. Outwardly, cold-blooded, no performance. Inwardly, overheated with a reverence that does not require proof. You are not producing joy as a public service. You are relinquishing the machines that drown the spring. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Psalm 30-5. Which morning? The one after counting ends. The one after the accountant lays down his pencil. The one after you have let the seed be seed and the soil be soil. And then, almost shyly, a different gladness appears, not spurred by anyone's apology, not tied to your victory in a private court. Joy rises from beneath circumstances like an artesian well. It is not a reaction. It is a revelation. You find yourself light without reason, kind without project, available without cost. The scaffolding is gone and you do not fall. You discover you are standing on bedrock all along. My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12-9. Weakness of what? Of the old self that needed an enemy to feel alive. Strength of what? Of the life that needed no help, no headlines, no ledger, only your consent to let the false die. Then forgiveness is no longer your achievement. It is your atmosphere. And the night, which felt like death, is revealed as the midwife of a birth you could not schedule into a self that no offense can name. Now we speak of the maturation of love, and it will sound colder than it tastes. Love grows up, and when it does, it loses its sugary voice and gains a spine of clarity. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you. Matthew 5:44. What kind of love can bless a curser? Not the kind that needs a thank you card, not the kind that requires an apology to oxygenate it. Mature love is impersonal, not indifferent, not aloof, impersonal, as the sun that warms the weed and the rose without reading the headline. It is universal goodwill without bargaining chips. It does not say, if you meet me halfway, I will consider compassion. It proceeds from the God self, and so it is free of contracts. Charity never faileth, 1 Corinthians 13-8, because it is not an arrangement, it is a nature. Let me pull a thorn out where we've kept a rose pinned. Pity. Pity is not divine love. It is a sticky syrup that glues you to someone's drama and calls it compassion. Pity says, I must feel your feeling as mine to prove I care. Do you think it is the Christ in us that grows exhausted, that staggers under borrowed grief as a credential? Or is it our humanhood that craves a starring role in their tragedy, weeping on cue to be sure we are seen as good? Divine love is not a spectator's tear. It is the steadying hand that lifts without entanglement. Bear ye one another's burdens, Galatians 6-2. Is not sentimental fusion. It is spiritual support that does not collapse into the same hole. No emotional interchange. The current of spirit moves. The wire is live, but the rubber around it, insulation, prevents shorts, shocks, and house fires. Insulation is not indifference. It is the condition required for power to flow usefully. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Proverbs 4:23. When you are insulated, you carry a climate. You can walk into a wind of accusation and not swallow it. You can listen to grief without performing grief. You can sit with rage and not inhale the fumes. Outwardly cold-blooded, no theatrics, no rushed hugging to prove sainthood. Inwardly overheated, with a love that seeks the Christ in them rather than strokes the injury in them. This is how the Master could have compassion and also sleep in a storm. He did not commit himself to every projection. Jesus did not commit himself unto them, for he knew what was in man, John 2:24, 2:5. He recognized the weather without letting it set his barometer. What happens to relationships under this government? They get sane. You stop needing apologies as oxygen. A man's failure to say sorry no longer becomes your famine. Agreement ceases to be your safe room. You can say yea and nay cleanly, Matthew 5:37, because your belonging is not rented from their approval. You can correct an error without heat. You can refuse an invitation without guilt. You can stand by a suffering friend and not drown to prove loyalty. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men, Romans 12:18. What lieth in you now is peace itself, so you do not have to manufacture it by smoothing every wrinkle in the world. Here is how to practice insulation without robes or retreats. When someone speaks, let the first prayer rise inward, quiet as breath. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works, John 14:10. Do you feel the shift? You are relieved of performing compassion as a posture. You are present, unclenched. Second, Notice the wires: flattery, blame, panic, seduction, despair. They are all currents. Without insulation, you will spark, agree to be what they say, or fight to be what they say you are not. With insulation, you let the current pass into God, not into your nerves. Third, speak only from the red letters you actually inhabit today, not the ones you can quote. Sometimes that means a single sentence. Sometimes it means silence and a glass of water. Abide in me, and I in you, for without me ye can do nothing, John 15:4-5. Abiding is insulation. Reacting is exposure. This is how forgiveness becomes a way of life and not a periodic emergency. When love is insulated, impersonal, universal, steady the offenses that used to pierce, now glance off the surface of a deeper stillness. You do not have to remember to forgive. You live in a climate where there is nothing sticky for offense to cling to. The room that had been a court becomes a clinic, then a chapel. Your days are not staged for redemptive speeches. They are quiet rivers in which those who are thirsty may drink without owing you their theater. Think if no evil, 1 Corinthians 13:5, becomes natural because you have retired the accountant who needed evil to count. And in that climate, 70 times 7 dissolves into breathing. Love serves, heals, corrects, and departs without residue, outwardly plain, inwardly burning with a compassion finally freed from the drag of your personal self. Let's put this on the street where you and I stub our toes. 3 little laboratories, 1 method. Remember, we are not out to be morally impressive. We are out of the business of being the offended self. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Then look and ask, what is this touching in me, life or pride or Christ or humanhood? And move the loop, stillness, impersonalization, release, boundary if needed, outwardly cold-blooded, inwardly overheated with love. Scene 1, family table, soft laughter, and then the Bob slides under the china. Well, you've always been the irresponsible one. Feel the old film reach for the projector before the story hardens. Stillness, inhale as if you are stepping out of your body and standing beside it. The Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works, John 14:10. No reply yet. Let the heat drop 10 degrees. Now impersonalize. Separate the claim from the Christ in both of you. The claim says, I am small and must defend my title. The Christ says, I am whole and need no title. Which will you be? Who touched me? The Master asked when power went out from him, Luke 8:45, 4:6. Let your answer be, not my Christ, only my pride. Release. Drop the courtroom. Whisper inwardly, neither do I condemn thee, John 8:11. The picture of an enemy is refused admission. Outwardly, be simple. Pass the salt, please. Or if wisdom requires it, a clean boundary. I'm not available for that tone. We can talk later. Let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay, Matthew 5:37. No sermon, no scowl. If correction is needed another day, bring it then without dragging an accusation chain behind you. You will feel the self that feeds on family rolls starving, and you will not die. Scene 2, office air, stale coffee, and the report you birthed appears with someone else's signature in the meeting. The body flares, throat tight, jaw set, stillness before the volcano declares itself a prophet. Take no thought for your life, Matthew 6:25. Take no thought, that is as fuel for identity. Who is your source, this manager, or the one who opens doors no man can shut? Promotion cometh neither from the east nor from the west, but God is the judge, Psalm 75:6-7. Impersonalize. Refuse to let a colleague's hunger tell you who you are. See the Christ where the grasping self seems to be. See the same Christ where your indignation stands. Release the enemy image. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34. That is not theater. It is inner government. Now act serpent-wise and dove harmless. Matthew 10:16. Send a factual clarification. For accuracy, here is the draft history and my contributions. Request a private meeting. Set boundaries for credit tracking going forward. Do what is clean without venom. If the outcome favors you, do not strut. If it does not, do not starve. You were never living on their bread. Give us this day our daily bread, Matthew 6:11. And don't try to bake it in someone else's oven. Scene 3. The public square, also known as your screen, lights up with misquotes and clever insults. The old self lunges for the keyboard. I will set the universe straight by midnight. Stillness. Step back from the glow as if from a bonfire. Feel your pulse belong to God, not to comments. Impersonalize. Is Christ harmed here, or only your billboard? He made himself of no reputation, Philippians 2-7. Reputation is the garment humanhood wears to be warm at night. The God self is fire. Release the enemy image. Bless, don't bite. Bless them that curse you, Luke 6:28. Ask, is a clean clarification useful? If yes, offer one paragraph without edge and then log off. If no, be silent. Answer not a fool according to his folly, Proverbs 26-4. Do not cast pearls of explanation into a threshing floor, Matthew 7-6, not from contempt, but from stewardship. You are not your mentions. You are not your defense budget. Die daily to the urge to be seen as right. Live to be right with God. And here is the secret you only discover by repetition. The loop shortens. Forgiveness begins to outrun offense, not because you have become a spiritual champion with medals clinking under your shirt, but because you are no longer available for occupation. The same traffic runs, but you've learned the off-ramp. Family, office, internet, 3 stages, 1 exit, stillness before the story, impersonalization of the players, release of the picture, boundary without poison. Run it 70 times 7 and watch the counter fall from your hand. Then you will not remember to forgive. You will find you were living quietly where there was nothing left to forgive. Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. Psalm 119-165. Nothing in humanhood impossible. In the God self, natural as breathing. Now let me be embarrassingly practical. If you can find your phone, you can find the master. Have a red letter New Testament ink or app and keep it within reach as if your lungs depended on it. Thy word have I hid in mine heart, that I might not sin against thee. Psalm 119-11. We are not collecting verses to audition for a Bible quiz. We are training the nervous system to step out of humanhood on cue. What you contemplate repeatedly becomes your default under pressure. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, Colossians 3:16. Dwell means move in, rearrange the furniture, choose the colors. If the old tenant resentment still has his boxes in the hall, no wonder you trip at midnight, so lease the place to the red letters and change the locks. Here is the discipline, simple enough to make your accountant yawn and your soul live. Morning, before the world's weather report enters your window. Take 5 minutes and read the Master aloud to your insides. 1 paragraph will do. 2 is feast. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, Romans 12-2. How? By renewal, not by occasional inspiration. Choose 1 sentence and rephrase it into lived language for the day. Judge not, that ye be not judged. Matthew 7:1, becomes, I will not hold a private court this morning. Love your enemies, Matthew 5:44, becomes, I will not carry an enemy image in my pocket. Pray for them which despitefully use you, becomes, each time their face rises, I will bless, not rehearse. Do you hear the plumbing? This is not piety, it is mental hygiene. If you wash your hands before breakfast, why not your mind? Midday, stop in the hallway of your life for 60 seconds. No candles, no performance. Whisper within, peace, be still. Mark 4:39. That is your stillness cue. Then the impersonalization cue. I can of mine own self do nothing, John 5:30. Translate it, my humanhood will not run this meeting. Then the release cue. Neither do I condemn thee, John 8:11. Translate it, drop the picture, return the gavel. A loop in under a minute's stillness before the story hardens. Separate the claim from the Christ. Refuse the enemy image. If you can check a message, you can check your mind. Pray without ceasing, 1 Thessalonians 5:17, does not mean talk all day. It means refuse to live unconsulted. Evening. Close the shop. Read again. Let the red letters rinse the grit of the day. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Matthew 5-8. Purity is not goody-good. It is unclutteredness. Rephrase for bedtime. I release the day's auditions for the role of one who was wrong. If a name burns, put it on the altar of Luke 23:34. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Then add your own, and Father, forgive me, for I know not what I do when I live as an offended self. Do not dramatize, do not analyze, lay it down. Once a week, choose 3 sayings to memorize, not to impress God, who is not running exams, but to stock the shelves your heart reaches for when the shelves are empty. Set your affection on things above, Colossians 3-2, means set your reflex there. Under heat, the mind will grab what is nearest. If condemnation is nearest, you will condemn. If forgive, and ye shall be forgiven, Luke 6:37 is nearest, your hand will come back with mercy before your story lights the match. And please twist the Bible upside down into your own breath until it stands on its feet in your house. Hold no man in condemnation becomes the way you drive. Bless them that curse you becomes your email tone. Take no thought for your life, Matthew 6:25. Becomes, I will not make a diet of anxiety tonight. In this way, the red letters cease to be decor and become levers. They pull you into stillness when the trigger snaps. They pry the mask from faces so you can see the Christ. They lift the gavel from your hand. Out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh, Matthew 12:34. Fill the heart, the speech will take care of itself. What changes when you live this way is more than the mood in your kitchen or the temperature at your office. The one who is always on stage, hair perfect for outrage, forgets his lines and wanders off. I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. Galatians 2:20. Old things pass, not because the world has apologized, but because the counter fell from your hand and counted itself away. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Daily saturation in the red letters trains you to live outside humanhood. You stop bracing for offense and start breathing freedom as your native air, outwardly plain-spoken, inwardly fervent, until forgiveness is not your weekend project, but your identity-wearing shoes in the world. Here is the simple testimony after all this talk and practice. You stop living as the one who was wronged. The part of you that needed an enemy for oxygen discovers it can breathe in God without a tank. Offense rises as weather does, and before the human story hardens, you step into stillness. In that pause, you impersonalize, separate the claim from the Christ in them and in you. Then you release the mental picture that pretended to be an enemy. If the scene requires a boundary, you set it without venom, and you do it again and again, until the accountant in you, who loves to tally sins, has to lay down his pencil. Judge not that ye be not judged, Matthew 7:1. Stops being a rule on a wall and becomes the climate in your chest. This is the payoff. You are no longer housed in the tomb of the offended self. It's a tomb if you're living inside of it. It's only a body if you're outside using it as an instrument. The mind that once furnished rooms of grievance, photos, trophies, newspaper clippings of every slight gets emptied, and you discover you can move through your day unarmored, light, available, just strong. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Philippians 2-5. The Christ mind has no locked cabinet of reprisal. It hears the barb, notes the need beneath it, and answers from another altitude or does not answer at all. Outwardly cold-blooded, no performance, no trembling to prove love, inwardly overheated with a warmth that does not depend on being thanked. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. John 14:27. The world gives peace when the court adjourns in your favor. The Christ gives peace when there is no court. Do you think this will look heroic? Hardly. It may look like you are failing to care because you are not rehearsing pain on schedule. It may look as if you are made of marble because you have retired pity's sticky syrup. But the interior temperature is summer. Charity is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil. 1 Corinthians 13:4-5. Not provoked, not because you are numb, but because you are rooted. Not thinking evil, not because you are naive, but because you have ceased to run a theater that requires villains to stay in business. What shall we do with this today, not tomorrow? Refuse one rehearsal of resentment? When the mind walks toward that old stage to run the lines, turn off the lights, whisper, "Neither do I condemn thee," John 8:11, and walk out. Perform one act of release in consciousness. A name rises, bless it, and hand it to the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Luke 23:34. Add your own, and forgive me, for I know not what I do when I live as an offended self. Then move a finger in the outer world, a clean email, a boundary without barb, a silence that keeps no ledger. The seed is in the soil. Let it stay there. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10 is still the first move. Knowing is still the second. Letting go is still the third. And what of that troublesome arithmetic, 70 times 7, Matthew 18:22? It was never numbers. It was the end of numbers, the end of counting injuries, the end of living as the one who counts. It is the measure of freedom, repeated until there is no them to forgive, only the God self to live as I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me, Galatians 2:20. When that is more than a memory verse, when it becomes your street, your kitchen, your inbox, you will notice something almost embarrassing. There is less to talk about. The drama fades. The air sweetens. Work gets done. Love serves and departs without residue. The old self goes unhoused, and you learn to be outside using life as an instrument, not inside begging it for a name. This is not a medal, it is emancipation. Continual forgiveness is the practical path out of separation and into the lived God self. Run the loop until it runs itself. Die daily to the offended identity until there is nothing left to die. Then it is finished, John 19:30, does not mean your suffering is over because the world is polite now. It means the project of being the wronged one has closed its books. 70 times 7 has found its end, not in arithmetic, but in identity. And there, at last, there is only one to live, and it is love.